So the way we do retargeting is we've coined our own phrase called Omni-targeting. And that gives you a pretty good indication of our philosophy in that we want to be omnipresent for our prospects. And to do that, the first facet of our approach is it's multi-channel. We want you to be everywhere as a client. And that means places like Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, YouTube, Google Display, even LinkedIn or potentially Twitter, and anywhere else we can get ads in front of our audience. Remember, we're dealing with humans who consume content, possibly in the same way you do, possibly slightly different. Everybody has their go-to places where they interact online. We don't know from where they are, so we need to be omnipresent for them. We need to be everywhere. So the first thing is we've got omni-channel. We then try and make ourselves omni-relevant, and the way that we do that is we have good branded messages. We want different mix of messages. We want to be telling them the kind of things we just said.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no-bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Troyer, and welcome back to another show here at Show Me the Nuggets. And I brought back Rob Warner for part two of twos for now. We'll say part two of two. I'm sure there'll be a three at some point. My partner here at InvisiblePPC. And we talked a lot last time about starting a new PPC agency, selling PPC and Google search and tracking. And we got into a little bit about setting expectations and then prospecting. I think we left off with smart niches and then kind of setting some expectations in terms of what your markup should look like. And Rob, I just want to first and foremost thank you for coming back on, spending a little more time with us.
Absolute pleasure. Sure, we're going to have some fun.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'd like to focus on, I think we kind of left off on the prospecting side, just with kind of getting our foot in the door. So I'd like to talk about kind of converting clients, if you will. So when it comes to looking at the successful agencies that are working with InvisiblePPC, what are the core strategies that you think they're using to convert their clients?
To me, it's all about setting a future vision for your client. And that can present itself in a couple of different ways. So let's walk through a couple of example scenarios, because these scenarios play out over and over again. And they're just the same conversation in different variations. So conversation number one is, if you're particularly talking about Google Ads, you're talking to an existing advertiser. That advertiser today is getting an outcome from their ads that they are unhappy with. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to you. Even if they're not unhappy, they're at least curious. They may be benchmarking where they're currently at. And they may be looking at ideas to say, is what I'm getting okay? But more often than not, it's people in pain. It's, I'm spending X dollars and all I'm getting out of it is Y. I don't think that's what I should expect for my business. So in that case, future, and what you're saying is, where could that account be in the future? And so what you're doing is you're looking at what are the pain points today. So you're typically going to be reviewing an account, you're looking for problems, you're looking for opportunities, and saying, if we deal with all these pain points and we translate them into actions and outcomes, then this is the deliverable you'll get at the end of it. This is the kind of result you can expect. You can then match that expected result that you know, because you've got evidence to support it now, against their vision. And so for me, selling to an existing advertiser is an incredibly easy thing to do, because you're going, here's where you are, here's all the things that are wrong with it, here's where we think it should be. Do you like that? And if they like that outcome, that's kind of it. One of the great benefits of that kind of process is in the unpacking the problems and identifying the opportunities, you're reaffirming expert status anyway. So you're 100%. Effectively, by doing the process, you're confirming your position as the person who can deliver. And what you're also doing is, and we'll talk, I'm sure, later on about retention, but you're actually future-pacing retention, because what you're actually doing is, as a service provider, that the outcome that you're offering, you can get. You've proven it. So that conversation and that conversion process is a relatively simple one. And it will always end with, this is where we are, this is where I want to go. If you agree with that, here are the next steps. And it allows you to transition seamlessly to if you want this outcome, then first sign here, then send us money, whatever your process is.
Yep.
So it's a seamless close. I often find in that conversation, prospects will close themselves before you even get to having to close them, because you've told them what the problems are, you've told them what the solution is, they just want you to get on with it. If you're in an ambulance bleeding, you don't wait. The paramedic doesn't say, okay, here are the next steps, I'm going to put a bandage on. You just kind of get on with it. Similar conversation, different angle. New advertisers, they've not run anything today, they're brand new to this. We typically like to do what we call market analyses, which are essentially future estimates. And we can do those a couple of different ways. Last time we were here, we spoke about our Smart Niche program, where we know what the expected outcome is.
Yep.
Essentially, we're presenting an expected outcome based on what we know is likely to happen if they run ads. And our conversation essentially is around matching their need in terms of ROI versus our expected outcomes. If they match during that conversation, again, it's a very easy transition to move them into it without trying too hard. But you'll notice both of those approaches are essentially grounded in evidence. That, to my mind, is the best way to have a conversation around pay-per-click ads and anything else in digital marketing space, because it's not a guess, it's not an aspiration, it's grounded in evidence and expectation. And that makes it far, far easier. You'll often come across people who are relatively cynical. They find me a prospect out there who hasn't hired an agency in the past, who doesn't believe they've been burned by an agency.
Yep.
These guys are like unicorns. They're very, very rare to find. So you should go into any conversation expecting to have to present evidence. We're in a world where digital marketing is relatively mature. Although it's a very new industry, it's actually a very mature industry in many ways. Most people have bought at least once. Evidence is definitely the way to go. Avoid the hype, present evidence.
So would it make sense that, Rob, when there's a smart niche vertical, that everybody takes the data that's available inside of smart niches and expectations and uses that as kind of their market analysis, so to speak?
Yeah.
Here's where you're at. Here's where we think you can go. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, completely. I mean, you could not use it, but that would be insane. If my view is really simple. If you want to present an outcome that's outside of the parameters that are in there, then you're kind of gambling a little bit, because they're proven, and they're not to say they're their best case. They're kind of the average case. And if you think about average case that we see, you're going to hit that money 9 times out of 10. And so that's the purpose of that. If you want to move outside those parameters, there are times when it's achievable. But selling something, if Smart Niche says you're going to get a CPA in the range of $40 to $60, and you go out and promise your client 25, expect a bumpy start to that relationship, and it might not ever last to get to a point where it's smooth. And I'm making an assumption here that we're dealing with clients who actually care about their outcome.
Yeah.
There is one edge case just worth mentioning. We do from time to time get the clients who it isn't about ROI, it's about an ego play. And so the slight twist on this is if you come across one of those guys and they're not ROI driven, we sometimes see them, they present themselves in ways such as, I just want to make sure my ad shows up all the time. I just want to make sure my ad is above this guy's ad. Those kind of conversations, data is not going to be your friend anymore, because they don't care about the data. They care about, it's an ego play. It's like buying a big billboard, and my billboard's going to be bigger than his billboard. It's the same kind of thing. If he's got a 20-foot, or I want a 50-foot, and I want lights and bells on mine.
I'm curious, Rob, when you see those types of clients, how often does it a quarter later become about the budget then now?
Yeah, it always transitions.
I can say without doubt, every time I've had a customer like that, it's, I want, as much impression share as possible. I want my average position to be 1 or 1.1. And then a quarter later, they're complaining that they didn't get the ROI that they want.
Yeah.
And it's like, you kind of forced our hand. What do you expect?
Yeah, you're dealing with people, and the best way I could describe it, and I don't mean to be rude about him, he's got a medical condition, it's a little bit bipolar in terms of the way they behave. And what you get from them is it's very kind of flip-flop kind of approach. And one day it's all about impression share. The next day it becomes about ROI. The day after it becomes about something else. You're dealing with somebody who's typically got an impulsive, strong personal character traits. And so They're driven generally by ego and emotion, and they're hard clients to retain. In my experience, they're the guys who on day one will call you and tell you you're the king of the world, and on day two will call you and tell you're an idiot. And you go, I did nothing different between day one and day two. What's changed? And the only thing that's changed is the content of their head.
Okay, so most people are doing some type of market analysis. To recap, the Smart Niche program and people enrolling in that is definitely a no-brainer to be able to get some expectations in terms of what's possible in the vertical, and be able to show the customer, here's where you're at, here's where we think we can take you. If Smart Niches isn't available, Rob, how would you advise somebody about doing a market analysis, right? Like, what are the 3 or 4 things that you would look for inside of the account, or where would you point somebody?
Well, that's really interesting, actually. So inside our Smart Niche program, we've actually got a calculator that people can do for themselves. And that calculator will show them how to estimate outcomes in a market. So that's a really nice thing to do. If they can do that, that kind of takes away any doubt and gives them evidence-based outcomes. So people can do that for themselves and figure it out. But come back, if we back up a little bit from the detail, let's look at just kind of what I call the first principles of this situation. Let's use some common sense. Look at the market that you want to make a sale in. Is it a market where the first place you would go to buy as a buyer in that market, would it be Google? Is it something you're likely to search for? There are certain things which I would describe as impulse buys, or things that are sold rather than bought. Do you know what I mean? You know the things where you walk into the store and they've got a kitchen gadget that you never knew you needed, but it's going to juice your potatoes in 3 seconds and do all this kind of crazy stuff. And you go, never knew I needed one of those, but now I've seen it. I don't think I can live without it. Usually got one of these little TV screen demos, haven't they? Those kind of thing. That's how I would describe a product that is sold rather than bought. So you have to ask the question, is this product or service something that is bought, i.e. searched for? And there are ways you can prove that. Follow our guide and you can get some data on it to see if it's actually searched for in the first place. Second thought is, if it is searched for, where would I buy it? If it's a $10 item available on Amazon, there's a pretty good chance that's going to be a terrible thing for PPC, because anything that's available as a commodity that you can Amazon Prime, that's where the market's going to go for it. There's no margin in running ads for small ticket items unless they are repeatable consumables that you will buy over and over and over again, in which case you might be able to justify it on a lifetime value basis. So you're looking for things that you can't, for example, a replacement roof. You can't just go to Amazon and order a roof. There's a bit more involved there, custom kitchen design.
Maybe one day.
Who knows the way those guys are going. I'm sure if Bezos has got anything to do with it, that's exactly what you'll be able to do. You'll upload a picture of your house, they'll go, ta-da, here's how much your roof's going to cost. So the Amazon test is a great practical test as far as I'm concerned. You're looking for things that are personal, things that have a high service value involved in them, things that have a brand associated with them that you control. Again, if you are just one of 1,000 people who all sell the same item at roughly the same price, it's not going to be a PPC play, and margins come into it. So it's come to common sense. Are people searching for this thing? If they are, who's in that space already, and can I compete with them and win? And just do some Google searches. If you see that your top competitor is Amazon, Walmart, and Costco, you're probably in trouble. Don't go there. If on the other hand, it's 2 local mom and pop shops, and you may be a local mom and pop shop, then you're in the game. Go for it. And that's my sort of common sense approach to it.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a good high level overview. Let's assume that somebody has a current existing Google account, right? What are your thoughts on kind of high level, the top 3 or 4 things in terms of a market analysis or just an analysis of their account, right? If you have 5 minutes to look at a Google account before a pitch, right? And you're going to take them from here to here, what are you going to look at? Like, what are the big levers?
Number 1, tracking. 50% of the accounts that we see don't have tracking set up, and 75% of them don't have it set up properly. So if you can't track it, you can't measure it. So anything where, and here's an honest view, if tracking is set up incorrectly, then every other conclusion we draw about that account is highly suspect because you're basing it on inaccurate data. So first thing is, what's the tracking setup? Second thing is, I want to look at the keyword strategy at a high level. So I'll pick the campaign that's got the biggest spend. I'll dive into the ad groups that are in there. And the things that I'm looking around for that set my sort of alarm bells off are, is it broad match keywords?
Yep.
If it's broad match keywords, I would call that an amber flag. It's not a definite red flag yet, but it's pretty close to it. And how many keywords are in each ad group? If you're seeing more than a dozen keywords in an ad group, there's a pretty good chance it's off. So those two things, first and foremost, things that I'm looking for. I would caveat that next thing I want to check out is negative keyword list. Have they got a really built out negative keyword list that might be controlling those broad match keywords and helping it work? There are some markets where that's a good strategy. So they're my initial go-tos. I then want to see the ads that are running and see how well those ads are being tested. And the final thing, so if tracking is 1, keyword type and volume is 2, ads is number 3. I want to see plenty of ads running to be tested. Number 4, and this actually in many respects, much to my annoyance, is the biggest lever of all, is where are they sending the traffic? Is it a really good, well-built, optimized landing page, or is it their website? If it's their website and it isn't really focused on conversion, there's your biggest lever right away.
Yep, 100%. I can't believe more people aren't really pushing negative keywords. Like that's the one big thing for me that's always, if they have tracking set up, it's like, holy crap, great job, right? But then always I find so many holes with negative keywords. I remember a client sold like supplements for dogs, for like joint supplements, and it was literally showing up in Google for marijuana related searches with joints. So the same customer, completely unrelated, but another huge negative keyword issue. A rapper, T.I., came out with a song called Flexin', and that was the company name. And so it was spelled different, but both huge negative keyword issues, had literally tripled their budget, and were getting no more conversions just because of those 2 negative keyword issues. And I was able to do what you just said, right? Here's where you're at, here's where you should be, just by taking out the negative keywords and figuring out like this isn't good, this is where all the spend's coming from, in the next 90 days, here's where I can get you, right? And I just backed out the numbers.
It's insane, isn't it? It's insane, those things. I mean, I'll give you one story and one tip back to sales conversion that comes out of this conversation that's really relevant. The example is we had a client who had, I can't remember what industry they're in now, but one of their products was the same product name as a Nike shoe. It's like, oh dear, the negative keyword list ended up being insanely long just because people were trying to buy shoes. And it was like, what do? We either give up on our brand and our product, or we figure out the way to handle this. We figured it out and we handled it with this huge negative keyword list. But that was a big issue for them. The other tip that comes out of this, circling back to sales closing, just 'cause it's a great example. I said about highlighting the pain and the problems. Do a search. If you're prospecting to a plumber in San Diego, for example, do a Google search or look through their search terms for worst plumber in San Diego. If their ad shows, you won't have to try too much harder in the rest of the sale because you go, hey, we found a bunch of problems, and did you know you're showing up for worst plumber in San Diego? That guy's getting fired that morning.
100%. 100%.
That's how you combine data and emotion.
I'm curious on the branding, on the negative keyword play with the shoe. How much money do you think that costed that brand?
Oh, it was thousands, and it was absolutely thousands.
Was that something where they named the product after the shoe was out?
No, the shoe came second, the product came first. So they got a long-established product, and they knew nothing about the fact this shoe even existed. That wasn't their world. It was. I can't even remember what it was, but it was something home-related. So it was like a manufactured item for something you put in a home, like an install of some sort. And it just had the same name, and it was a terrible clash. But what their argument was, what do we do? We've got thousands of these things installed in there. It's on all our boxes. It's on all the manuals. People know what it is. So people in the market would recognize our name. It's just now clashing with the shoe. And of course, suggesting to Nike that they change their product name is unlikely, I feel, to be successful.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work so well.
But their budget was about $10,000 a month, and this was their best-selling product. So you can imagine the amount of money every month going into managing. The success of that campaign manifested itself almost entirely on our ability to manage that negative keywords and manage that, because that was how we won or lost.
So one thing I want to point out is that I said that I gave them 90 days, right, to fix that, just in terms of me setting expectations, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, for those of you guys that have added negative keywords to a campaign, like, you know how easy that is. Like, I had to manage it maybe for a couple of days to get out all the variations, right? But understand, like, that's what setting expectations is, right? And I believe that just so many people are like, yeah, I'll fix that tomorrow. And then when it doesn't happen, right, then, you know, they're in a world of hurt. Or if it does happen, they're in a world of hurt.
No, I agree. 90 days is my go-to period for any PPC change. One thing to bear in mind as well, Google, and we've tested this in a sort of formal way, and we've tested it anecdotally inside our business, because obviously we have so many accounts. If you go into a Google account and you make thousands of changes on the same day that are out of the ordinary, Google's got AI running on those accounts. It kind of flips a bit. And so weird things can happen. So our process is very much around evolution rather than revolution. We find if we start making those changes and we drip feed them in over, in some cases, weeks, we get a much better outcome than if we suddenly hit them overnight. The upside of that is, of course, your client starts to see benefit almost immediately. But they don't think, oh, great, I've hired these guys, they've done everything in 24 hours. What do I need them for on an ongoing basis? Because they've clearly made the gains. It's done. So managing that expectation and delivering it over 2, 4, even 6 weeks, depending on the scale of the change, is a really nice way to do it. You don't freak Google out. You don't freak your client out, and you enhance your value with the client, because you're saying, look, we're 2 weeks in, we've got all of this done, but we've still got a load more to do. And it's a great future pacing thing. So when we talk about retention, the expectation is where retention starts.
I think we hit on it last time, but, you know, Facebook and the mentality with Facebook is very different than the mentality with Google. Like, that's what that makes me think of. And when I speak with a potential prospect, right, and they're running Facebook and that's their main traffic source, and now they want to run Google, I like quite literally want to run the other way. Just because expectations are night and day difference, right? Like, it's quite often go and a 24-hour test and then let's scale to the moon, right? Like, and that's obviously not.
You know, we had a conversation last week with a Facebook agency, and the thing I found whenever we've worked with agencies who specialize in Facebook is they panic and start jumping into our accounts and making changes. Sometimes it's like, dude, it's been live 48 hours. Get off our case. And they go, I can't believe you've let us run 48 hours without changing it. Are you guys crazy? Are you incompetent? No, we do Google. It's not Facebook. Yeah. These two things are not the same. And getting that mentality across is really hard for somebody who specializes in Facebook, where you micromanage by the hour in some cases. You may micromanage a Google account by the hour if you're running Expedia or Booking.com.
Yeah.
You probably do, but you don't on the vast majority of small, medium-sized business accounts. And so stopping the Facebook guys freaking out is a bit of a challenge.
Cool. So let's move now. I think now is a good point into onboarding and retention. And I kind of want to group these together because I think that retention really starts in the sales process, and we've talked about that. But it's a big key in onboarding. But then I want to talk about kind of the long-term, fast forward to the long-term kind of retention plans. And I know that, Rob, that you spent more time on this than most agencies, and I know that you got a lot of value to give here. So what are the 3 or 4 things in terms of onboarding that we can start with, that we can do to set expectations and really make sure that we're thinking about retention from the get-go?
Yeah, so first of all, just say you're absolutely right. Retention starts during the sales process. It gets reinforced during the onboarding process, and you then deliver it into your transition into your ongoing management. Think about psychology for a second. If we think about people we're dealing with, when we buy something, we all get that little dopamine hit. We all get the, yes, I've just bought this thing. It's going to be the best in the world. It's going to be transformative for my business. An hour later, buyer's remorse starts setting in. And that's not because anything bad's happened, but that's because we're human beings. We are programmed to then worry about what we've just done. Have I done the right thing? I haven't got an email from these guys yet. Can we trust them? Are they worth? And all these doubts and things. So during any client relationship, and particularly during onboarding, you are managing the client's emotional state and their perception of you as a business. If we forget the actual steps that have to take place for a second, what we're doing is state management. We're managing their state of mind and their perception of us as a business.
Yep.
And we know that we're dealing with a worsening state of mind until we go live. You think about what there is a gap. They say yes and they pay money. There can be a gap that can be 3 days, 5 days. It can be weeks in some cases before first results start to appear. The longer that gap and the more silence that lives in that gap, the worse they feel about you. And even if you ultimately deliver, the longer that's taken, the worse they feel. And it's really hard to recover from that, even if you do an awesome job. So a bad onboard process in 90% of the times will lead to a poor client retention outcome because they lose trust, they lose belief. So if we know that that's the case and we know that our customers are going to go through this process and this mind shift, our job becomes managing that mind shift preemptively. So during onboarding, it's all about future pacing. Again, this client may have never bought a digital marketing service before. So they don't know what the future looks like. If you don't tell them your version of the future ahead of it happening, guess what? They make up their own version of what they think was supposed to happen or what their friend said happened to them in their business. Or if they had an agency in the past, what happened last time? So we have to future pace exactly what's coming, why, and what to expect, and keep pointing out the value. And I like to do that as multi-channel as possible. So if you can use phone calls, emails, video calls, text messages, if that's how your client likes to communicate, the more multimodal you keep that communication, the better. And every single piece has to go, this is what we're doing next. This is why it matters for you. This is what you need to contribute to it. And if I'm asking you to contribute, I'm telling you why I'm asking you to contribute. And then this is what's going to happen next. And so everything is circling forward. And that needs to be tight right to the point at which the campaign goes live. So if it's got your form, we're going to book in a call. Booked in the call, going to build your tracking. Built your tracking, going to test your campaign. And keep stepping them through it. And you map this out. And I would urge everybody listening, whatever business you're in the digital space, map out day by day by day what messaging you need to get to your client, what channel you're going to use to do it, and what you're going to do if something changes or goes off plan. Have a plan, have it documented so that it happens by design, not by accident. If we plan this in advance, that's where win live. That's where consistent service lives. That's good process. When we're live, again, we're then still repeating the cycle. We're getting into a further future pacing exercise. Today is live. We're going to have a conversation 2 weeks and check in on where we are. Then we're going to have a conversation in the 4 weeks. We're going to send some reporting out. And keep future pacing towards outcomes. Remind them of where they are on that journey. If you ideally can, tell them what the journey is going to look like to your 90-day outcome. Remember that 90-day outcome you mentioned? Let's zoom in on that. And at day 60, we want to be future pacing a 12-month outcome. We want to be looking forward. So they've got a plan for the future. So that is how we approach it. We document it, we plan it, we know what the schedule is, we control it, we tell them. Because if we control that, then they're working to our plan and we're not trying to second guess what theirs might be. Because bear in mind, if they've got a plan as to what they're expecting, they're not going to tell you that. They'll tell you when you've got it wrong. They'll tell you if you do something or don't do something they were expecting to happen. But that's the first time you'll find out about it. And to me, that makes a big difference. And I think the other final thing I would say, in addition to the planned communication, the expectation setting, there's one other thing that's worth doing as well. Think about what a client win looks like from your business. what are the points at which you can interject a celebration with your client? Your campaign's live is a win. Maybe send them some chocolates. You've got your first lead. Maybe that's a win. You've made your first sale. Maybe that's a win. Whatever it is, look for reasons to celebrate with your client. Because if you can celebrate with them, you become part of their team, and they'll value that. They even value the fact that you've noticed it happened. Because you knew they got the first lead. They go, oh God, these guys are on the ball. You think about that in terms of how you can demonstrate that and celebrate. So does that answer the question, Joe?
Yeah, it does. And I think what you just brought up there at the end, it makes a whole lot of sense too. I think a lot of business owners are so removed from the day-to-day operations that they don't know a lot of times what you're doing, or they don't know that you've even achieved that result. So you bringing it up and saying congratulations to them really is like highlighting what you just did, not what they just did, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's a huge win. But the framing there I really liked. Instead of saying, hey, your campaign's live, yeah, that's a win, and you need to communicate that, but you just got your first lead. It's, it feels a little different, right?
Yeah, it's their wins, not yours. They don't care how clever you are. They care what you do for them. So if you celebrate their wins and recognize them, it shows you're invested in it. It shows you're paying attention to it, and it shows that you give a damn. And that's a massive thing. So I definitely advocate doing that.
So celebrating their wins. Recently, I saw that we just helped somebody celebrate a win. Can we talk about that broad strokes just to give somebody an example in the Slack chat the other day? You know what I'm talking about? This is what happens when you put people on the spot.
Jot my memory. I've just done 2 transatlantic flights, so my head's a bit fuzzy.
So in the InvisiblePPC Slack chat, there was an industry magazine that one of our clients just got mentioned in, right? Got some press.
Yeah.
And so I had never seen how we handle this at Invisible, and I just thought it was cool. Is a good perspective or a good example of this.
Yeah, so in that one, it's great feedback, by the way. So thank you for prompting me what we're talking about. Yeah, they've got a industry award. We've been working closely with them now for 5 years as an agency partner. It's been a big relationship during that time. And so what we've done is there are 2 key principles in that business. So we're sending them both gifts because when we flag it, we have a channel dedicated in InvisiblePPC to client wins. So it's on our team. Our team have a responsibility that if they become aware of a client win or they see something, they're immediately to put it in that channel, and as appropriate, we will send gifts. And sometimes it's just a phone call. Sometimes it's a well done. Sometimes in this case, we will send really nice gifts. It's a big deal that they've won. The gift itself, in many cases, doesn't matter. We want to make it personal. We want to recognize it. We want to make it appropriate for them. But the fact we've taken the time to do it is kind of what matters the most. One thing I will say, when you're sending client gifts, don't expect thank yous. You nearly always will never get them. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. No. Don't be offended. Don't be upset by it. Don't think about not doing it next time. Still notice even if you don't get a thank you. And one thing I like to do as well is send gifts that clients can share with their team. If there's more than one person in that business, you can make the whole business. You may have 2 or 3 different points of contact in that business. Make everybody feel good. Gifts that are shareable are great. And I like to do that a lot. Joe, can I circle back to one thing that we didn't mention, but has just kind of, as a result of that thought process popped into my head that I think is valuable. Whatever digital marketing service you sell, be it PPC, be it Facebook or whatever else it is, just about everything we do is intangible. You might see it in a shopping cart outcome. You might see it in the phone ringing more. But people don't, we assume that because we've generated, say, 50 leads for a client, that they know that we've generated 50 leads. They don't. Oftentimes, they just think the phone's busier. They don't make the connection. So think in your business how you can make the intangible tangible. So, and at the point of event, not subsequently afterwards. A report at the end of the month goes, we sent you 50 phone calls. And how often, you must have seen this, how often is the client going to go, really? I wonder which 50 they were. Did they convert? Did they do anything? I'll have to ask the person on reception what they thought. So one thing we do wherever possible is we put a call whisper on. So it says, this is a PPC call, answer it now. It makes the intangible more tangible. Send them an SMS reminder when a call comes in. Send them an email. Show them copies of the ads. Anything that brings to life that intangible thing. But I often describe our business when people say, what do you do? I say, we sell disappearing pixels, because that's essentially it is. The value of the work that we create disappears the moment somebody uses it, which is a strange kind of idea, but it's just a good reminder of how intangible the things that we do are. I sell SEO rankings. Really? How do I translate that into value? And let's move that point of connection as far forward in the process to real time as possible. It's far more valuable than a report or any kind of thing you can do subsequently.
A good friend of mine said he did some research, and the number one reason that people stop working with an agency is indifference. And for me, it comes back to this conversation, right? It's like, what are you doing for me lately? What are you doing for me now? Even if you've done a good job, it's like, yeah, well, they did a good job. Doesn't mean that they are today, right? So I think it's communicating the wins, but it's communicating everything else in between is important. And sharing and showing your expertise and that you're staying in front of the market and what's happening is ultimately what's going to, the combination of those things is what's going to get you to keep clients long term.
Yeah, absolutely agree. One of the great ways to think about it was one of the expression one of my colleagues used here previously, which is, you sell the Christmas tree.
Yep.
That's your core service. But actually, people care about the decorations, the baubles, the lights. And so doing the core just isn't enough. You have to decorate it really well and make it look beautiful. And people appreciate that whole thing far more than the core that you actually just do for them. So educate them, train them, make it tangible, make it real. Show that you're engaged in the conversation. Show you're engaged in the relationship.
Any other thoughts on onboarding or retention before we move on? Now, I want to get into retargeting.
No, I think you've got the gist of whatever my thoughts on that. I think the key thing is, and I reiterate it, is have a plan in place and also have a plan to handle deviations from it. If something goes wrong, have a plan for when something goes wrong, because it will from time to time. And it's no use burying your head and hoping it goes away. It will go wrong, and when it does, you need to demonstrate to your client that you're on top of it, and your communication almost has a branch. This is the happy day communication plan, and it branches off in the everything's on fire plan. Have that planned out before. Yeah,
and you're going to have deviations, or you're going to have changes to a plan. You don't want to have massive changes to the plans, or they're not probably going to work, right? But you're going to have deviations, and you definitely need to plan for them. All right. So on the last show, we talked a little bit about retargeting in that last episode. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the results that we've had with retargeting at Invisible, and why at the highest level agencies should consider selling retargeting, and any business should potentially consider retargeting?
Yeah, as you know, this is my favorite topic of the moment right now, is retargeting, because it's kind of the most valuable thing that many people don't do. And it's a strange thing. We all get focused very much as business owners on that front end lead generation piece, that front end getting traffic to our website, getting people to our door. What we don't do very well is what happens once they're on the inside and making sure they convert. And so retargeting, as we've often described, it's kind of like your silent salesman. Yeah. It's there doing the heavy lifting of marketing and selling for you 24/7, wherever your prospect happens to be. I mean, can you imagine that? If that was a physical store and somebody walked into your store, had a look around, picked up a few items, walked out without making a purchase. Imagine you could have somebody walking around with them going, da-da, don't want to remember this. Look at this, it's on special right now. Hey, don't know if you forget, we've got a 5-year guarantee.
It reminds me of the guys outside doing like the spinning signs and stuff, right?
Well, imagine that guy was following you around for the next 6 months. Now, that sounds kind of creepier than it is, but the principle's the same. And that's the way I like to think of it. If that would be a physical store owner's dream come true, but it would never be a reality, and it's impossible to do. Whereas in digitally, that's exactly what we can do. That's exactly what we can do. And so, not everybody makes the decision in the moment. The vast majority, 95% plus of people who visit a website will not make a decision to inquire in the moment. And that's where retargeting comes in. We're there for the 95%. We can actually help the 5 become customers. We can help the 5% through a customer journey. But the bigger opportunity lives in the 95% who don't. So when you talk about results that we see, typically, we see a 20% uplift, 20 to 40% uplift in the number of inquiries through a website just by adding retargeting. And the best part of that is, A, we get 20 to 40% more inquiries, but B, the incremental cost of doing that, I can't say is actually zero, but it's pretty close to it. Most of our clients who are spending on PPC ads, at most 10% and more often 5% of their budget is spent on PPC. On retargeting rather, and yet it generates 20 to 40% of their inquiries. That's a hell of an ROI. That's one heck of an ROI. And particularly as you are going to spend the money on the front end to get the people to your website. That's why you run PPC. That's why you run Facebook ads. That's why you pay for SEO. Whatever it is you're paying for to get people to your front door, then paying a little bit more will get you a 20 to 40% better outcome. I think that's a win.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. What do you think is the easiest way for an agency or a marketing director at a company to pitch, right, the boss man retargeting?
We could go for the standard phrase that I know you and I have shared several times that I'm going to throw your own phrase back at you and credit you for it, which is retargeting is the only advertising that makes all other advertising more effective. And that's really it. It's whatever we are already doing, this will make it better. Wherever our traffic comes from, this will make it more powerful. So as a pitch, as a one sentence elevator, that's as simple as it gets. Referring to my previous comment, if you want 20 to 40% more leads for 5% more spend, that's a hell of an elevator pitch.
Yeah, I think that those two options are, I mean, you can't go wrong using either one.
Oh, no, absolutely not. The first one's slightly more flippant, but it's absolutely true. The second one makes it slightly more quantifiable. I think that there is a third one, which is a slightly different tack, which is we get to control the brand narrative that people see about our business after their first point of contact with us. And we can control that on Google for up to a year and a half. Now, very few businesses get the opportunity to repeat their brand value and messages in front of their prospects on an ongoing basis. Or if they do, they might get a search result, an SEO result, where that's not a narrative control. That's just look and you hope the right result comes in. We're all about controlling that message.
Yeah, I think it's great because, like you said, it doesn't matter what anybody's doing. It's just an added benefit to every advertising medium, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not biased. It doesn't care if you're doing Facebook ads and then you're running Google retargeting, right? It doesn't, or vice versa, right? Like it just works, right? It just helps everything.
Exactly. And I think if a business recognizes that it wants to attract visitors to its website in order to generate inquiries or sales, it must also recognize that it's in its interest, having invested at that piece, to make it as effective as possible. If you're going to, let's take a scenario. Let's say a business has a $10,000 budget for a month of spend. But whatever it's spent on, SEO, PPC, content, doesn't matter. Whatever they're spending their money on to drive traffic, wouldn't it make sense to divert 5 to 10% of that into something that we know is going to increase the outcome 20 to 40% overall? That's the overall outcome. We'll get 20 to 40% better. If I was the person in charge of that spend, I certainly would want to allocate that 5 to 10% because that's where my win lives. That's how I look good to my boss. I don't need any more money to do that.
And we can see that happening, right? Or kind of unfolding as we talk with more and more Facebook media buyers, right? Like that's a huge win and a huge opportunity for them when they see what we're doing with retargeting. It's like, wait a second. Yeah, like we need to add that to the campaign just to give it some stability, right? To even out the big wins and the days that aren't such big wins.
Exactly. And I think the thing is as well is we think of this in terms of lead generation or initial sale. It's actually a phenomenal strategy for existing customers. If you have products or services that can be bought more than once or that should be bought more than once, isn't it surely in your interests to keep those messages in front of your best buyers so we can retarget customers? We can retarget people who inquire but don't become a customer. That group of everybody. If we think about where our money lives, the biggest opportunity by volume usually is the 95% upwards who don't convert. The biggest opportunity by value probably is once you've got them to convert, get them to repeat buy. And in the middle of that, you've got people who are in the decision-making process. If you think about those three separate audiences, that's a great place where money lives.
Yeah, I mean, lifetime value of the customer is amazing. Obviously, we're in such a review-driven marketplace as well, right? Making sure that we talk about our brand and that we highlight those reviews, and we look at remarketing and retargeting as an indoctrination almost to our brand and what we want them to think about us. And we control, as you said a few minutes ago, that narrative.
So there's three things. Here's what we've got on offer. We want to show you what we've got on offer today. Here's a reason to engage with us. Number two, our brand values. Here's why you should trust us over our competition. Here's what we stand for. And number three, here's reasons to believe us, where we use reviews and testimonials from customers. What we've got, why, what we stand for, and why you should believe us. You put those three together, it's a pretty potent combination.
Yeah, I like that breakdown. That gives a lot of context around the situation. So just cognizant of time, we're almost at the top of the hour here. Can you explain, Rob, kind of our thoughts, or not our thoughts, I guess, but how we do retargeting? Because how we do retargeting is very different than the vast majority of the marketplace. And I think to conceptually help people understand, when we start talking to people about doing retargeting, it's like, how many of you are doing retargeting? Everybody's hands go up. And by the end of the conversation, it's like, so how many of you are doing retargeting? And nobody puts their hands up, right? So can you give a little bit of context to how we're doing retargeting and why?
Sure. So the way we do retargeting is we've coined our own phrase called Omni-targeting. And that gives you a pretty good indication of our philosophy, in that we want to be omnipresent for our prospects. And to do that, the first facet of our approach is it's multi-channel. We want you to be everywhere as a client. And that means, places like Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, YouTube, Google Display, even LinkedIn or potentially Twitter, and anywhere else we can get ads in front of our audience. Remember, we're dealing with humans who consume content possibly in the same way you do, possibly slightly different. Everybody has their go-to places where they interact online. We don't know where they are, so we need to be omnipresent for them. We need to be everywhere. So the first thing is we've got omni-channel. We then try and make ourselves omni-relevant, and the way that we do that is we have good branded messages. We want different mix of messages. We want to be telling them the kind of things we just said. Here's what we've got. So we run actually four types of ads. The offer ads, here's what we've got. We run the branded ads, which are here's what we stand for. We run the review ads, and here's why you should trust us. And finally, we run seasonal ads, which allow you to stay in prospects' minds in a way that's timely to them at the moment. So it could be 4th of July holiday, it could be Christmas, it could be New Year's, but seasonal ads that are relevant. And the way that we do that then is what we call omni-rotation. We don't want prospects seeing the same ad 1,000 times. It's highly expensive to run, it's inefficient, it's boring, and it's ineffective. So our creative process means that for any typical client, we'll generate upwards of 150 ads that we're running at any one time for them. That's a heck of a lot of ads. 150 ads means that we can rotate frequently. It means that the same ad is only ever seen a few times, and so it doesn't become annoying. The person doesn't become blind to it. And we also cap the frequency, so they're not seeing too many ads on a daily basis. By putting those things together, so we're omni-channel, we're rotating, we're relevant, we're on multiple different device types, we stay really well in front of our prospects' minds in a way that's highly, highly efficient, and it controls that narrative. And that, for us, is the key to it. And let me just explain why. I've got time to do that. There's a really simple reason why nobody does this. It's a lot of work. Just to generate 150 different ads, create all the audiences, synchronize the ads across all the audiences. That's video and images and things. Very few people, other than the biggest brands, are willing to take the time and effort to do that. Most people, when they say they're running retargeting, They've got an ad. they've got an ad on Facebook or on Google, and that's it. And that's not the best way to do this. So we know that the Omni outcomes compared to normal outcomes are significantly higher, and for all the reasons just explained.
So do you think that there's a place, and I'm curious, I've never asked you this, do you think that there's a place where retargeting doesn't fit?
Yes, to a degree. There are places where I can see it being less valuable. So if we think about why it works because 95% of people don't convert on the first visit. So if we think what does convert on the first visit, typically things like emergencies. If you need an emergency plumber, that implies that you probably are going underwater and you need somebody there now. A 3-month retargeting campaign is unlikely to be successful. If you look at the conversion rates on those kind of niches, emergency locksmiths, emergency plumbers, to a degree, they're generally the ones where you're going to see a lower return. Outside of that, though, I can't think of anything where it would be a definite.
On the locksmith, I would agree, right? Like windows should be a lot smaller. On the plumber, though, the emergency plumber, chances are, if you're calling an emergency plumber, you're ending up with some water damage, which is going to lead to a ginormous bill to you or your insurance provider, which is going to lead to probably some not so great feelings. So I would argue on plumbing, actually, and emergency plumbing specifically, that the brand ads and review ads and testimonial ads, I think it would be highly important for probably a 7 to 14 day window.
I think you've given me an idea.
Because it's like the retention play. It's like it's the feel good play versus the blowback. What do you mean this is $15,000, right? So that's curious. That's very interesting.
It's exactly that. And I think so. Yeah, I agree with you in terms of there are sideways moves you can make on it. I think from the point of view of the emergency plumbing service itself, it's difficult. But if you think in a larger sense, and you've got the right kind of customers, absolutely, it makes perfect sense all day long that you could do other types of retargeting to other services. And that's why many businesses don't think about this. They think about what's immediately in front of them. I mean, we've done it and we've used it even for, let's say, training companies to existing customers to get them to show up for the training they're provided, to get them to consume the content they've already paid for, to retain that feeling of brand value. That's massively valuable for people. And because it's your existing customers, it's ridiculously cheap. You can't assume that people are opening your email all of the time because there's a pretty good chance they're not. So if you want to stay in touch with them, retarget them.
Yeah, for sure. Email open rates obviously are down, not to be a Debbie Downer, right? Like we need to be hitting people on as many platforms as possible, right? I could put out an email and get X amount of clicks, and I could put out a YouTube ad, for example, just on one platform and 10X that number of clicks, right? And cost me very little because I would be using an audience that I already have.
Yeah, exactly. And to my mind, that's one of those great things that if you think about it that way, if you've got, let's say you want to communicate for me for even 2 to 3 minutes, that's going to be, let's call that 500 words. If you do a short, quick, informal video, then retarget with me, I'm probably going to watch that when I get a break in something convenient. You send me a 500 word email, I'm probably not reading it. So yeah, a 500 word email feels like hard work. A 3-minute video seems like fun. So again, think about the mindset of the people that you're interacting with, that retargeting is not just about that front end acquisition, although it's hugely important.
So as an agency owner, Rob, or as a business owner, where does retargeting fit into, and omni-targeting fit into the overall marketing strategy? When do you think that it should come? Does it come at the end? Does it come at the beginning? Does it come at the middle? Does it just come as soon as possible? Right? For people sitting here saying, okay, great, I see the power of this, but where and how do I implement? What would you say?
There are 2 predecessors that you need to have to make retargeting successful. Predecessor number 1 is traffic, any description. So even if you're starting a new campaign, you're going to drive traffic today, that's box checked. You can do it if you have that traffic. So even if it's day 1 of your PPC campaign. Second thing that you need is thoroughly built out tracking. And that's where most business owners drop the ball, most agencies drop the ball, and why we invest so heavily in our tracking processes. So if you have those two things in play, you can't start soon enough. Because why wouldn't you want to start maximizing your chance of converting a customer at the lowest possible incremental cost as early as possible? You know, you're going to spend the money on the other stuff anyway. Make it more effective.
100%. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the sooner the better, as long as, like you said, tracking is in place and there's enough traffic for the pixels to fire and for the ads to actually run.
But as we know, it needs to be big. I mean, 30 unique users in 30 days is an audience big enough for Facebook to run. 100 is big enough for Google to run. So let's not misunderstand. This doesn't need to be months of delay time. You could turn a campaign on today, build an audience by tomorrow, and be showing ads. It can be that simple in some campaigns.
Awesome, man. Anything else to kind of wrap it up and to put a bow on things? I'm trying to go through my questions and kind of everything that we went through. See if we're missing anything here. I guess if somebody wants to learn more about Omni-targeting, where's the best place, I guess, for us to put in the show notes? Just a link to the site probably, right?
For me, Omni-targeting is something that just about every business around should do. I think it can be the difference between a failing or break-even campaign becoming a highly profitable campaign for a business owner. And so agencies need to think about it from a retention perspective. I mentioned earlier about how you can make your campaigns more tangible for clients. We talked about call whispers, SMS messages, emails. There is nothing more tangible to a client who inevitably will visit his own website than seeing his or her own ads all over the internet and YouTube and Gmail. That's a highly powerful engagement tool. They will see those ads. They will see the fact that the ads change. They will see the outcomes. So as a retention play, it's a great thing to have for a client. They're going to get a better result and they get to see themselves everywhere. You've achieved two major things with that one simple, low-cost service. And that, to me, just makes it the ultimate thing that every agency ought to offer. I can't think of any type of agency, whether you're selling PPC, SEO, Facebook ads, content. I can't think of a service, even reputation. I can't think of a service where this doesn't make it better. And therefore, if you value the right outcome for your customers, or you are the customer, you ought to be demanding that you do this. You know, if you're the customer, your agency needs to do it. If you're the agency, you need to offer it, because there are wins there for your clients. And if you've got their best interest at heart, look after them. Yeah, and I think you just said something important too, right? Even you as the agency, right? You should be doing this, right? You should be, you know, showing yourself off and staying front of mind with every prospect that you have, with every current customer that you have, with every past customer that you have. You should be re-engaging them and staying top of mind. And ultimately, you know, that this allows you to do that for, you know, a penny or two a view. I mean, you can't beat it. Exactly. So awesome, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I really, really appreciate you being here. Another hour, very, very well spent. I know that these are probably going to be two of the most popular episodes so far. So Rob, thanks so much, man. And I'm sure we'll have you back here shortly on Show Me the Nuggets. Yeah, well, the danger is, Joe, it becomes the Rob and Joe show, and that's kind of going to be boring for everybody. But thank you for having me. I've had a blast as always. It's always fun to think these things through and articulate them. So I appreciate having me on, man. 100%. Talk soon. Take care. Now, before you go, I have something extremely special for you. What if some of the top entrepreneurs of our entire industry went a little nuts and decided that they'd give away their best products for free? Well, forget the what if. This is actually happening, all right? These top entrepreneurs join me, and we are now running a contest to give you their best products absolutely free. And you don't want to miss out on this amazing opportunity. So go check it out at digitaltriggers.io/contest. And I want you guys to understand that yes, this is a contest, but there is quite literally something for everyone. So just by joining, you are a winner. So go check it out at digitaltriggers.io/contest. Again, that's digitaltriggers.io/contest. And guys, again, this is a limited time contest. So go ahead and do it now before it's too late. We'll see you on the next episode.